Your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
Hey, good evening, horror fans. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Weekly Horoscope. I'm your host, Jerry, here with my partner, Matt. And Matt, we have a special category this week in honor of your birthday. So we're going to talk. Cheers. We're going to talk about some birthday horror, and this isn't a real deep category. There's a handful of movies, but I was kind of surprised with the limited amount that we really had to pick from here.
Yeah, it's not really a general a genre typically, but trying to like hone in on something specific, to have like a theme this week. I thought it would be something different, something interesting we could do. Birthdays are a celebration of life, and they can be a remembrance of what we have and what we can be thankful for and the people we share those lives with. So a horror movie that shatters that reality can be very powerful to draw home the point of how fragile life can be.
A recent example that came to mind was Happy Death Day, which was kind of the slasher take on the Groundhog Day type of scenario.
Yeah, it
was actually very, very well done.
Yeah.
But we decided to dig a little deeper as we like to do.
Yeah. And
for those of a certain age, the first movie that pops into mind is the one we're going to tackle first. And it's Happy Birthday to Me. From 1981, directed by J. Lee Thompson. And this is just a early 80s slasher in the vein of Halloween, Friday the 13th. And they literally just walked through the calendar and said, what can we do? There's My Bloody Valentine. And there's, they just pick any example we can to make a slasher.
It felt like the original template for what the Scream movies would later become in the 90s. Like when I was watching it, I really felt like there was a lot of where the Scream came from. I couldn't help but pick up correlations when I was watching the movie. Like there had to have been some kind of influence. This complex, college teen murder mystery with all these different characters and a lot of the comedic tropes that they put in there intentionally, very self-aware with what they were doing. I thought it was very interesting. It felt ahead of its time in a little bit of a way.
Yeah, our movie starts with Bernadette, and she's a member of a high-ranking high school group, and I find some of the plots to be a little contrived. Like your top 10 kids in the school are like forced to hang out together. Like if you're the top 10, you become a clique, and that's your thing.
Yeah. Very, very stereotypical, like the jocks of bully type stuff. And yeah.
Right. There were stereotypical characters in there that stereotypically wouldn't be in your academic top 10. But for the purpose of this movie, they're all jammed in there together.
Right. Yeah. And they're all kind of like the popular jerks kind of trope.
Yeah. It made me wonder, does the school have like 12 and these are the top 10?
It seemed that way because the lady, the dean or whatever, was really riding them hard. Like, you guys should be working harder, and I was like, I thought they were the top 10. Like,
we'll talk about some of the plots here weave in and out in kind of odd directions. But we start with Bernadette. She's a member of this group, and she's headed to a get together. All the kids in the group are going to meet at a club, and she is strangled in her car. And somehow manages to escape.
Well, she escaped because it was the worst possible choke that you could ever put on someone. It wasn't a rear naked choke. It was just two hands, and you could just step forward and get away from that. Yeah. I've done maybe too much jujitsu, but I watched that. I was like, it's not a rear naked choke.
It wasn't using, a wire or a...
No, it was just two hands from the back. Yeah.
And she manages
like a turtleneck.
Kick herself free, and she gets out of the car. And in another, what I thought was kind of not great plotting, she gets out of the car and runs 10 feet and stops to gather herself.
Yeah.
And then runs another 10 feet and is just stopping and looking around like, you are not safe, lady.
No, you need to run until you're in the next town, or someone picks you up.
and she encounters someone that she knows. We don't see the perspective, but she's like, "Oh, hey, yeah, it's you." And she seems like she feels safe for a moment, and then that unknown person slits her throat.
Yeah.
And then we cut to the group waiting at the club, and Alfred, who's like a weird taxidermist guy, and he's got a mouse in his pocket, and it's clear he's kind of the outcast of the group. He shows up late.
Yeah.
So we
and he wants to buy the girl a drink, and she's like, "We don't buy drinks for each other. We don't do that here. That's the rule." And he's real creepy. He's like, "I still want to buy you one anyways." And it's like they're kind of making it seem like he's the bad guy right away.
Absolutely. He shows up late, like the girl recognized somebody, like automatically he's suspicious, and he's got a mouse in his pocket, and he's just odd, right?
Yeah.
So the kids end up leaving the club. There's a confrontation where one of the jocks puts the mouse in the beer of one of the older men at the club, and a brouhaha starts where nobody actually pushes anybody or throws a punch or does anything action packed. They just get up a lot of hooting and hollering at each other.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, get out of here. So like before there can be a big commotion, they leave.
When they leave, they all get in their vehicles and they play a game by jumping off an open drawbridge.
Yeah, this suddenly becomes Fast and Furious for like 5 minutes.
Well, and another interesting part is, why is the drawbridge randomly opening at whatever hour at night? Drawbridge is open for the passing of barges or tall ships.
Yeah.
And
just there has to be dispatch for it for certain times. They can't just willy-nilly come and go. Like,
But as soon as they left the bar, they knew they were headed right to it, and it goes up. Now, the cool thing about my favorite part about this movie is really nothing to do with the movie. I used to live 2 miles from that drawbridge.
That's awesome.
And
it wouldn't randomly open. It wouldn't randomly open.
No. You live very close to where that drawbridge was at the time also. Drawbridge used to go across in Phoenix, New York, and connect Route 57 to the Baldwinsville side that I lived on. And at the end, if you watch all the way through the credits, there's a thank you to the village of Phoenix, New York.
That is awesome. That's actually really cool.
Which is one town over from where you live and one town over from where I used to live, and it was the town between us. So I remember hearing about this as I was a kid, but I was too young to go hang out on a movie set or go get in the way, which I would have loved to have done.
Yeah, that would have been real cool. Yeah, that's a nice little piece of history for the movie, though. That kind of makes me appreciate it more.
That's my favorite part of the movie. So
the
last car one car turns off because he can't make it, and the last car barely makes it over. And Virginia is very mad when they make it over, and it's upset. She gets out of the car and walks away. She was pissed that they tried it. We don't really know why.
Darts.
Yeah. Virginia is the main character, and she is the actress. She used to be on Little House on the Prairie. So this was is it Melissa Sue Anderson, I believe?
I think so, yeah.
So she, it's kind of a twist for her to be in this kind of movie coming off of Little House on the Prairie.
Right, yeah, but she still has that innocent. I think that's actually one reason they think they casted her, because they wanted that innocent look. That house on the prairie look, should we call it,
Yeah, and her character goes through a bunch of twists and turns through this movie, and acts a certain way in character at times, then acts differently in character at times, and we find out part of the plot twist why that happens. When she leaves, she walks and goes to the cemetery by her house, and she talks to her dead mom. She sits at the grave and has a conversation. One of the guys from the car, Etienne, follows her home, and he climbs up the trellis onto the roof and goes through her window, and he's hiding in her house. We're like, okay, this is super creepy.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, is he the bad guy? Because this is not actions that a normal person would take.
Yeah.
And instead, he watches her change and get in the shower, and then he steals her panties off the floor and leaves out the window. Like,
it was part of that that 80s misogyny that we've talked about often, that it's just so blatant when you see it. Like, did we need that scene?
And like it comes up, we'll talk about it in a second, but he would be arrested. Like it's
Right.
not a bad joke. It's not a prank. He would
Yeah.
flat out be arrested. It's
Right.
stalker.
It's
It's
a
breaking
law
and
that you can't.
entering. Yeah, he would be.
Yeah.
He would be arrested. It's just
Yeah.
you look at it
He'd
and
be
it's
on a,
cringeworthy.
he'd be on a registration list for sure.
Exactly what I was thinking. He wouldn't be able to go back to school because he couldn't get within 200 yards of it.
Right. Right.
We see in school Virginia's having flashbacks to an experimental treatments to help regrow her brain cells after an accident she was in. And okay, I made kind of a note of this, having not seen this movie since probably 1982. It's kind of an interesting sidebar that they never refer to again.
Yeah.
The only reference is she has a doctor who is close to her, and she kind of considers a family friend that she relies on, and he plays a role in the rest of the movie. But my first thought is that this experimentation was, impacted her. Maybe she's hallucinating, maybe, had some kind of impact that's going to tie into the movie, and they never refer to it again.
Yeah, it kind of confused me a little bit because my mind was stuck on that part. Like, okay, how does this play into the plot or the story? And they don't reference it. They just start doing other things. And I was like, wait, what are they doing? What about that part that happened earlier? And they like you said, they never go back to it, and that kind of threw me off.
I think the plot overall in this movie is kind of a little bit sloppy, a little messy, a little put together with things that don't ever pay off or make sense at times.
Yeah, I was thinking that, and I was worried that maybe I was a little slow. I was like, "Am I not picking up on certain things?" Like, but it was confusing. Yeah.
And we may be equally slow because I thought it was
no. I really think this movie like left out some important elements in the storytelling part of it, and they kind of tried to do too much, as they say.
Yeah, I agree with that. They should have honed it in and focused. They were trying to be
this movie was
misdirection and complicated, and they just became muddled, I believe.
It became very muddled. Yeah, that's a great way to put it, this movie, because it's an hour and 50-minute movie, and it probably could have been an hour and 25-minute movie. They probably could have taken 25 minutes off of a lot of these scenes.
Agree. So the group goes to see Etienne win a motocross race. And at the end, Virginia's congratulating him, and he at this point he says, "Well, of course I was going to win," and he pulls her panties out of his motocross uniform.
Yeah, which he should have been arrested for doing in front of everyone.
and she gets mad and storms off, but that's it. Like seriously, dude? Wow.
Yeah. The whole thing was like, wait a second, that's like admission to a crime that he broke into someone's. But everyone was like, yeah, whatever. He won. Yeah,
he's a great racer. Later, we see Etienne in his garage working on his bike, and in a convenient turn, he of course is doing bike maintenance while wearing a scarf, because that is of course how you would do it. And the killer comes in, and we don't get to see the killer. We kind of get a POV shot as the killer coming in and stalking him.
Yeah, and I think the killer's wearing gloves. That's like the key indicator. It's like throughout the movie, you see the gloves. Yeah.
Very Giallo-ish with, mystery killer with black gloves.
Yes.
And the killer throws the unwarranted and unnecessary scarf into the rear wheel of the motorcycle and revs the engine, and of course it gets his neck stuck in, and then you see the blood splatter. A couple points for trying to be creative in the kill, but the scarf, immediately I'm like, oh god, why is he wearing a scarf? Like, when they were coming up with the scene, they had to hurry up. Like, well, how does he get his neck stuck in there? It's like someone was just like, he has a scarf on, and they're like, all right, run it. That's as much thought as they put into it. He could have went to a banquet for winning the thing and had a tie on. It could have been something that at least made sense. That had something to do with the plot, but he's still in his gear, but he has just a scarf on for some reason now. Yeah, he was getting his Freddy from Scooby-Doo Halloween costume ready or something, getting his ascot warmed up. Yeah, didn't make sense, but
right.
So, and you see right away, like, oh, here's a wheel, here's a guy with a scarf. I know how this is ending.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they could have done it a lot of different ways. Could have hit him in the head with the wrench and then just slammed his head into the wheel and revved it or something. But
Yeah. Virginia and her friend Anne, they break into Alfred's house because they're suspicious of Alfred, as we all are. And they find Bernadette's head on a platter. And it's like, okay, it is Alfred. Wow.
Yeah, Reanimator-esque. Yeah, it's just sitting there.
Yeah. And they try to leave, and Alfred blocks them. It's like, oh, they're caught. And then, it was a little swerve, a little misdirection. Alfred shows him it's not real, and he makes masks and does like special effects and those kind of things. Again, I'm sorry if you take a missing classmate and you're making a dead animated head of hers and putting it on a platter, even if you're not the killer, that is still severely messed up.
Yeah, and he's also saying, like, I want you guys to be the next models.
Yeah. So they try to leave it like, okay, this doesn't prove he's the killer, but we're still suspicious.
Yeah, and they don't even think they're creeped out. I think they're just like, okay,
we thought you were. Oh, yeah.
And that's the end of the scene. I was like, what?
Yeah, and I'm all, special effects guys are the coolest guys on set, in my opinion, and they do the clever and creative thing. But you're missing classmate's head.
Yeah,
couldn't you do something else?
You couldn't do anything else. You just had to do that one. Yeah,
exactly,
and if you did it before and find out she's missing, you should have been like, I need to burn this.
Yeah, I need to get rid of exactly. The next we see the Steve is working out at a gym by himself, and he's doing weights on a dumbbell. He's doing bench presses, and the killer murders Steve by adding too much weight. He keeps putting weights on the dumbbells.
Yeah. And Steve asks him to put more weight on. Doesn't even question that someone else is in. He's like, "Hey man, you want to start helping me out?" And I'm like,
"Yeah,
don't you know that it like what?"
So he throws way too much weight on, and he's struggling with it. And to help him along, he drops a random weight just right on his junk.
Yeah,
which causes him to drop the whole bar and
on his throat. Yeah, and then for some reason, blood splatters everywhere.
Yes, there's a few examples of this where the random blood and it didn't match the kill.
No, because when you're bench pressing that much weight, if you literally just move like one hand, like let one hand go, the whole thing will tilt and go over, and you're safe.
The weights will all fall off one side.
That's all you have to do. But it fell evenly onto his throat. If he had just let one hand go.
Yeah, before he got his junk crushed, once he knew he was in trouble, just get out of there.
Yeah, just let one hand loose and it'll just tilt
up. Let it go.
That's it. That's all that happens.
So it didn't make sense. The blood didn't make sense where it flew. But this movie
tried to be different.
Wasn't built for logic.
Right.
Rudy asks Virginia to go out on a date, and she goes. One thing about this group that I've noticed is they all hit on each other, and they all go out together. And like somebody will go someplace with one and leave with another, and nobody cares or gets upset. It's really this weird. They're just like trading off partners left and right.
Yeah,
it's just
a swingers. Odd. It's the swingers cult.
The top 10 swingers club.
Yeah, it's the 80s, I guess. I don't know.
But for their date, they go to a bell tower of a church, and Rudy start acting like really, really odd and peculiar. And
like Igor.
Yeah.
He's doing Igor impressions.
It was the Hunchback of Notre Dame. He was like, he just wasn't behaving normally. So she gets out of there. But the next day he's normal and they're hanging out again, like nothing ever happened. Again, a plot point that I don't even know its purpose or what. It didn't lead you anywhere.
A whole scene. Yeah, a whole 8-minute scene. I'm like, why did we need that?
Yeah, it had no payoff. It didn't tie plot wise into anything. The next day they're hanging out and they find a human skull in the garden. The police come and investigate, and they determine it's not a missing person or their missing friend. It's a lab specimen from the school that was stolen.
Yeah, and then the whole crowd just laughs it off.
It's like, oh yeah, no big deal. Now we see Virginia is visiting her mom's grave again, and Alfred is watching her. And it's like back to, okay, is it Alfred again? Because he's been on our radar a few times. And he's about to give her a flower, and she turns and just stabs him straight in the stomach. And it was like, wait a minute, why?
I don't know.
Like it came out of nowhere. And in another nonsensical move, she stabs him in the gut, and he suddenly has blood on his forehead.
Yeah.
He wasn't bleeding out the mouth from internal injuries, which you could make sense, and would have looked cooler. He just had a splatter of blood on his forehead.
I think there was an editing issue at the final cut.
Like, where'd that come from? So he's just dead in the garden, in the cemetery.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, I guess Alfred's not the killer. No explanation of why she killed him. No, didn't even know she had a knife. She just stood up, turned around, and had a knife in her hand and was right into his stomach.
Right. That's another good point. Yeah, where did the knife come from?
And it almost, you see this in movies where somebody turns and it's almost accidental. It was almost framed that way, but there was no reaction to indicate that it was.
To indicate it was like, oh my God, yeah, it was just, and that was it.
Arthur or Alfred, I'm so sorry. Nothing.
Yeah, what have I done? Or even pretend it was an accident, right?
So we move on from that like it never happened. The story just now. Virginia's dad is going out of town, but promises to be back Sunday for her birthday. And Virginia now, they're out, the group is out, and she brings Steve home because Rudy today, whoever.
Steve tomorrow, yeah. Whoever's alive.
Yeah. So Steve comes home and she's feeding him. They're laying by the fire and it's kind of romantic, and she's feeding him off of a skewer and then just sticks the skewer through the back of his throat.
Yeah, they're making out. He's like, "These are delicious. Have some more," and just shoves the skewer, which is the cover of art for the like the VHS.
Yeah, and on a lot of the I've seen the cake poster, and I've seen covers with the skewer. So it's probably the most famous kill from the movie. It's okay. It's nothing special. It was just a little unexpected. She's feeding him, and then all of a sudden just. In it goes.
That's it.
So, did you have kebab or anything for your birthday by chance?
No, I didn't.
I'd steer away if I were you.
I had nachos. I can do that. It's actually sometimes when I'm eating a chip and you put too big of a chip and you try to swallow it, it feels like that.
Yeah, or if you get the chip the wrong way, it's
the triangle one, it kind of doesn't go down right.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, is this how I die?
Yeah. So the next day, Anne comes to visit Virginia, and Virginia's sleeping, and it's past noon, and she says she doesn't remember anything from last night. Well, now we've seen Virginia, our good girl and main character, kill two people that we're aware of. She says she doesn't remember anything from last night, and Anne says, well, take a shower, you'll feel better. In the shower, she has a flashback, and we see her mom's car getting stuck on the drawbridge and falling in, and her mom drowning.
Yeah. Which I thought was a really expensive set piece for this movie. Like, I was like, wait, they actually, like, I feel like they spent a lot of money on this movie for it to be such a, like, somewhat of a mess,
Yeah. Well, and that, the same drawbridge. Thank you for the town of Phoenix, New York.
Yeah. Thank you, Phoenix. Yeah.
But the mom drowns, and when she kind of snaps to out of her flashback, and Anne is in the tub and is drowned. And now she starts freaking out.
Yeah, I think it fills with blood too. Like it's water, and then it's all red water, like blood or something like that.
Yeah, like a Shining-esque kind of.
Almost like she committed suicide in there or something. I was confused by that too. I was like, "What? Why?" All right.
And it didn't make sense, but it's certainly disorienting from her point of view. And it's like, well, now we think, is she the killer? Like, is she just blacking out and missing time? Is it to do with that experimenting on her brain? Like, there's things that make sense, but they never bring them into the story to make them make sense.
Right. So you're left questioning this entire time. You're trying to put it together in your mind, and you're like, why can't they just make this cohesive? And it was a little confusing for me.
So she calls the doctor who did the treatment on her, and she's been talking to him along. He's almost like her therapist. And
I thought that's what he was, to be honest.
Yeah. Like
They don't
he's
even
been in
say.
her life
Yeah.
since this experimental procedure, and he's still in her life. But
Yeah.
he comes to the house and he brings her up to the room and shows her nothing's in the tub. So she completely imagined Anne being dead. And he tells her that, them playing chicken on the bridge may have triggered her bad memories of her mother and caused all this trauma in her head, which, makes sense.
Yeah.
The police come to her door to ask her some questions, and the doctor tells them that she's sleeping and she's going through a rough time and she's not doing well, and he'll have her call when she is up. So another movie where the doctor quickly overrides anything the police need, and they just listen.
Yeah. Well, we saw that. I think we absentia, right? Where like the therapist was just like, no, you're just, this is all in your head.
Yeah, it happened there. It happened in back when we did the Wolfman.
Yes.
The police had questions, and the doctor's like, "Oh, he's too traumatized to listen to your questions right now." Like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
you just got a murder here. Nothing, we'll get back to it when.
Yeah, and even
better.
the Wolfman, when the police show up to the scene of crime, they're like, "There's nothing to see here."
Yeah. The doctor tells her to try and remember what happened before the accident. And here she has the revealing flashback where it's her birthday party, her mother's there, and no one else is there. They have name placards around the table for our group of 10. Nobody shows up. And she, her father's out on business. He didn't make it back for the party. And the mother's just angry. So
she's day drinking.
Oh, yeah, of course. And she tells Virginia that, or Virginia tells her mom that she actually doesn't even really know these people, and they're all at Anne's actually having a party. So they get in the car and storm off, and they're beating on this wrought iron gate, demanding to be let in the party. Yeah. And you get kind of a reveal that Virginia's mom is not a high class person, is kind of looked down on by the town. Maybe some rumors about her.
I'm sure that day drinking doesn't help.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't. But she's like, I won't be laughed at anymore, and it's on the way home.
We'll go to their party. Yeah, suddenly it's like a party crashing movie. I'm like, what is going on? Why does the mom want to crash? Why does the mom want to crash their party? What does that have to do with any of this? I don't think her character was like even introduced at any point.
No, and this was suddenly it.
She's like, she's drinking, and we're gonna crash their party. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. They don't get in, and it's on the way home that the accident occurs, and the mom dies. So, and her mother does make the statement that she's going to make them all pay. So my first thought is, oh, the mother didn't really die. She's perpetrating all of this stuff, behind the scenes kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's not it either. But
no, it's not.
Now we see, now that she's had this flashback, Virginia kills the doctor friend with a fire poker. We don't know why. We just, the one person who was helping her, she kills him with a fire poker. And the father gets home and he finds blood, and he finds the doctor's body outside, but he doesn't find Virginia. So he starts trekking through, and he sees that the mom's grave is dug up, and there's tracks to an old abandoned house. He goes in, and Virginia has a table set up with all the corpses and is singing to herself with birthday cake.
Yeah, like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre-esque type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Demented dinner table.
Demented dinner
and it's
table.
like, okay, so was Virginia all along? These experimental things were brain, all these things, whatever. But then I go back to, well, she was at the club, though, when Bernadette got killed at the beginning. So that never tied in either.
I know. That I don't know.
She slices the dad's throat, and you're like, oh, my God, now Virginia's literally killing everyone. And then one of the bodies at the table that's tied to the chair at the table celebrating the birthday lifts his head up, and it's Virginia. And it's like, okay, now I'm really confused. But the Virginia that we've been watching kill all these people pulls off a latex mask, very Scooby-Doo bad guy reveal with the mask pulling off.
Extremely Scooby-Doo.
And it is Anne. And it's like her friend Anne. And we find out that Virginia's mom was Anne's father's mistress, and that Virginia is actually his daughter. So Virginia and Anne are half sisters. And the affair, when it came to light, ruined Anne's family, destroyed her family, and she wanted revenge. So Virginia was never killing anybody. It was Anne being Virginia. And my first thought was, wow, that latex mask would be the best special effect of this entire movie.
Right. Yeah. And then you're led to believe, okay, they was getting it from Alfred. So Alfred made these masks. Right.
Yeah.
But I don't even think they directly answer that. You're just left to assume it like 20 minutes later after you watch the movie and you put it together.
Yeah.
They could have introduced Alfred character. You know what I mean? Like he was making the mask for her. They were a team. Oh, okay. That would have made sense. And they're working together, and one could have been in one location at another time, and they could have had this whole like reveal. Nope. You don't even get that.
Nope. So she's got the knife now that she's told the whole story and why everything is with she pulls the knife at Virginia, and Virginia, she's going at her with the knife pointed at her, and Virginia simply turns her arm back and stabs herself with it. It was the weakest self-defense in the history of self-defense, but it worked. So Anne stabbed herself in the chest, killing her, and now completely messed up Virginia is singing "Happy Birthday to Me" to herself.
Yeah.
And
the dead bodies.
That's the movie.
That's
and
it.
I think it had potential for some of the even some of the things we've talked about. If you could have done this, to make it make sense. They failed to make a lot of it make sense.
They didn't tie stuff together, and it just made things really confusing. It needed to be more concise. It seemed like there was a lot of editing issues. Some of the scenes were pretty cool. Actually, some of them were a little funny, a little bit like a little charm to some scenes here and there. And like it didn't, I was like, there's some potential here, like you said, and it just falls apart like a deck of cards.
Yeah, this could have been, I think, with a few tweaks, it really could have been, quote unquote classic slasher. It was never going to be Oscar bait, or anything like that, but it could have been.
It could have been a cult classic.
Much better.
Like you could, it really could have. I thought there was some elements to this movie that they did well, and there was a lot of potential there, and it just did not come together. Too confusing. I was like, why is it so confusing to me? And like, I'm glad we got to talk about it because I thought it was just me at first.
Definitely not. But it definitely fits the category of birthday horror, and was the first movie I thought of when we had this category. So
yeah, absolutely. So
it does have its fun spot in history.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun to watch, and I was like glancing back in history and seeing how these movies kind of like somehow influenced like genres one way or another. Like I said, it kind of reminded me a little bit of like Scream. Like with some ideas with the twists and plots and who's the killer. Like there's this one scene where Rudy's like goes up to Ginny, like puts his hands up, like, look, I wasn't there last night. Look at my hands. He was like showing her something. I was like, hey, they have that scene in Scream. You know what I mean? Like there's some kind of like elements there that could have worked, and it just didn't come together.
So our second film in this category, as we often like to do, I think represents a dramatic tonal shift from the classic early 80s slasher. This movie is a different thing altogether. The movie is Clown from 2014, directed by John Watts. And this is a movie I had seen before. It was good to revisit it, and it's really different. It's hard to categorize this movie. Is this something you enjoyed, Matt?
Yeah, it's enjoyable. Eli Roth was a producer for this movie as well, and it kind of has that flavor to it. It's quickly paced. It kind of gets right to the point. It has some logical plot holes, but it doesn't even care because I don't even think it takes itself serious. I think it just kind of has fun with it. Like there's some stuff like logical, like why would the cops be there? There's some stuff that happens that's like that doesn't really make sense. But this isn't like a noir detective film. This is just about the premise is ridiculous to begin with. So I think it just kind of has fun. It's quickly paced. There's some cool scenes in it. I found it enjoyable.
I uncovered
the best movie ever.
You mentioned an Eli Roth. I uncovered a pretty interesting Eli Roth tidbit that I wanted to share. He originally had nothing to do with this movie, and when they put it out on the like independent circuit,
Yep.
They put from from horror master Eli Roth, and it got back to him, and he's like, I never heard of this thing. So rather than be like mad and sue him, he actually met up with the guys and like watched the movie, and then like helped them and became a producer. Actually helped them get it distributed and shown, which I thought was pretty cool.
Dice. They rolled the dice. They knew what they were doing. They were trying to get his attention, and they couldn't get a hold of him. And they said, "We'll get a hold of him." And they rolled the dice on that one. And I bet he met them and found out they're really cool. And like, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like shouting someone out on Twitter kind of thing. Like he was. I think that's what that's rolling the dice move, because that can get you in trouble. But
get you in big trouble
worked for him, right?
And I think it's like that's kind of like what you think of the horror community. Like everybody's like picking each other up and helping each other and wanting to support each other. But that was a pretty ballsy move.
Steven Spielberg broke into I think he broke into like the WB set when he was a teenager and just pretended he worked there and lied to everyone. And that's how he got involved in Hollywood, right? I mean, sometimes people just make big risk, big reward. Sometimes you just kind of go for it. Yeah, you just got to do what you got to do. It worked for him. And he was actually Frowny the Clown in the movie. That you see it real quick in the beginning, the scene with the clown where he's on the TV with the makeup on. That's Eli Roth. He's like, all right, I'll do a little cameo. Yeah.
Yeah. So he went, they used his name without his permission. Then he went full in helping him, which I thought was cool. So good for him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Our movie starts, it's Jack's birthday party, and the clown who's supposed to come cancels. His dad, Kent, is a real estate agent with properties all around, and he's working at a property, and he's got to come back for the party, and the wife tells him what happened, and he starts going through some old stuff in this house and finds of course, there's a clown costume there.
And right there, he makes a self-aware joke of the movie. He's like, "Who double books a clown? That doesn't happen." You know what I mean? Like, so like they're aware of the plot. Like
and talk about plot convenience. The house he's at has an old clown costume in the basement. Very convenient. So Kent shows up to the party as Dumbo the clown, and he saves the day. He's funny. The kids are laughing. He does a great job. Everybody's happy.
Yeah. The wife swoons. Oh my gosh!
And the early indication from the pieces we get is that Kent is a loving father and husband and a good guy.
And that's the classic. Her father doesn't like him at all, which is another classic trope, right?
Yeah. Doesn't I don't know? It seems like he's successful in his endeavors. I'm not sure what.
Loves the family. Yeah, has their life seems like it's together. I'm like, why doesn't he like this guy?
After a long, busy day, he ends up falling asleep in the couch in the costume. Well, the next day, he can't get it off. In his efforts to get the costume off, he ends up cutting his wrist at one point, and he breaks the blade on a Sawzall that he had put down by his neck.
He puts a reciprocating saw down his back. I was like, that sounds like a worse idea than when you had the box cutter. Like,
but it breaks the blade. He can't get it off. He goes home at the end of the day, and his wife's like, "You went to work like that?" He's like, I can't get it off. And like, she starts helping him and trying to help him. And she's a dental hygienist or a dental assistant.
She's like, this is what I do. Yeah. And it's kind of, she's laughing at him. He's like, don't laugh at me. Like, she's like, well, it's ridiculous what we're doing. So again, it's very self-aware. She's like saying how ridiculous this is. Yeah.
She gets the tweezer, like the big clamp tweezers. And she's pulling off his clown nose with these dental pliers. And it finally comes off, and skin rips, and the nose is bleeding. And in a weird twist, the family dog just eats the clown nose.
Well, as dogs do, right? They just eat everything on the floor.
I guess. But you're thinking like it's plastic or rubber, or
with blood on it. Yeah, it just comes in
chunks of flesh stuck to it. But they get the nose off, but that's it. The colorful wig has interwoven to his own hair. And the suit.
She's convinced. She's mad. She's like, "Did you dye your hair and perm it?" And he's like, "No, this is the wig I put on." It's kind of a little mini argument right there. It's kind of funny. And what bothered me, it's like, why didn't he try shaving it?
Right. It's exactly what I would have done.
I would have done that immediately.
Kent starts to get insatiably hungry. his stomach's growling and he just wants
Yeah,
to
there's
eat.
a lot of gurgling going on with scenes with him. He starts getting really you hear all his gurgling. Yeah.
He gets in touch with Herbert Carlson, who is the brother of the man's house where he found the suit. And Herbert Carlson tells him to stay away from the suit. And he says, it's too late. I'm wearing it. And he's like, all right, meet me at my warehouse. I'll meet you there. And when he gets there, Carlson drugs him and ties him up. And this is where he has an opportunity to tell him the origin of the clown, as we know it today, is actually an Icelandic demon that was named Cloyne, Cloyne, that hid in caves and ate children.
Yeah.
And somehow evolved into clown.
Yeah, during the winter months, he had to feed on 5 children, 1 child per month for the 5 months of winter, and then it would go back into hiding.
So he tells him that I've done this to you because I have to decapitate you to keep the demon out of our world. And Kent gets loose and they end up struggling him. And Carlson tells him, which I thought was kind of a cool line, you're not wearing a suit. It's the skin and hair of the demon.
Yeah, that was cool.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, this movie had some cool stuff to it.
So Kent, he goes home, he makes it home, and he tells his wife, and she has company there, including the father who hates him.
Which you don't find out until after he's had this, like, he kind of just like spews his guts. He's just like, we got to do this. He comes in frantic, and then all of a sudden it stops, and the camera turns, and like the family's sitting there with like their sweater vests on and everything, and they're like, what? It's kind of funny.
Yeah. Of course, they think he's mad. And he says, no, I got the guy. He brings him out and he's got Carlson tied up in the car. And he's like, look.
The brother just comes up and punches him in the face like, you idiot.
And he at one point he goes over and he grabs the clown hair. And he's like, just take it off. And he tries to grip.
That's what he does. Yeah.
And he grabs his hand and just snaps his arm with the bone sticking out of it in one easy turn.
Like the arm wrestle fight from The Fly. Yeah, he just like the arm just flaps back. Yeah.
It's funny because I wrote 2 things down that I thought this movie was heavily influenced by. And one was The Fly, with the body transformation and the blending of 2 things into one. And the other was, and we'll talk about as he starts to transform, it reminded me of a werewolf movie. That's
a really good analogy. I never thought about it like that, but that's a really good analogy you could say about it. It's a werewolf movie, but it's a clown. That's awesome.
He actually has physical transformation. In fact, in the next scene, he drives away with Carlson in the car, and he starts transforming more. His hands grow, his feet grow through his shoes.
And it's weather based, right? It's because like the weather from the full moon with the werewolf, but in this it's the winter seasons. He needs 5 children. That's interesting.
So I'm like, this is a damn werewolf transformation here, except he's just not turning into a werewolf.
Right. He's a demon.
He's turning into this Icelandic demon. So those were the 2 parallels that I drew. When it's funny you would mention The Fly, because we didn't talk about that ahead of time.
Not at all.
They end up crashing in the car, and Carlson is telling him that he has to kill himself. It's the only way out of this. And Kent runs off, and he meets a boy camping in the woods, and the boy is like offers him food, which he looks like hell. Like it looks
homeless or something.
If I'm a boy and I run into that guy in the woods, I'm running and screaming.
Jerry, if I'm a grown man, if I saw that in the woods, I'd go running and scream.
This kid offers him food, and he bites his finger off.
Yeah.
We see
he's not fully yet a demon. He's not killing anyone. He just takes a bite.
Yeah, he's hungry all the time, and it's they show him in a bathroom. He goes into like a public bathroom, and this is what brought the Fly reference back to me. He's looking at himself in the mirror, and he coughs, and his regular teeth are coming out. Yeah. And these deformed demon teeth are coming in their place. And with just spitting his blood and teeth into the sink, I'm like, that's so
the
much
scene
like
from
the
The Fly when he was, he's like the pimple popping and the pus and all that, and the tooth.
In the bathroom mirror, and his ear eventually falls off. Of course, this guy's ear doesn't fall off, but there's definitely some parallels there. He ends up hiding out in a motel, that it's part of the property that he owns as a real estate property manager type of guy. And he meets a young boy, Robbie, who keeps trying to give him food and be around him. And he's like, just stay away. Just stay away.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's trying to protect the boy. He eventually calls home and tells Meg he is so sorry. And he sits down and takes the gun he has and he shoots himself through the mouth. Yeah. And on the wall behind him, there's a cotton candy like probably the funniest, coolest scene in the movie where, you know, if somebody does that, you see a blood splatter. This is just all clown colors.
That scene was intense and funny simultaneously because he's like, honey, I gotta go. And like they really build it up emotionally. And he puts the gun in there slowly, and you're like, oh no. And boom, he pops it, and then they turn the angle to point of view, and you just see like the clown paint kind of spray. I was like, it was good. It was good. I was like, all right, that's funny.
It's like somebody shot off a confetti gun, you know, just all these bright colors. Yeah. And it's liquid, and it kind of runs down the wall, and it's like,
and they show him kind of like dead, you know, like, and I was like, this movie's not taking itself seriously. Like, I kind of like that about it, you know.
Yeah, and but then he just in a moment he's okay, like it had no effect on him.
He comes back together. Yeah.
So Meg goes out looking for him. The next scene, Kent hooks up two circular saws next to each other. And he puts his chair, and his plan is to tip back and let the saws decapitate him because the gun didn't work, and he was Carlson told him he needed to be decapitated.
Yeah, and at this point in the movie, I thought, is this going to be an hour of him just trying to find ways to kill himself?
Well, of course, he tips himself backwards in the chair, and he doesn't fall straight, and it knocks the saw to fly off at an angle. And the saw flies over and kills the poor boy.
How did he get in his room? You need a key card. He's in a motel. He just opens the door.
It was an old cheesy motel, but you need a key at least.
Right.
Robbie's standing there, was trying to bring him food again, and the saw just, finishes off Robbie.
Yeah, it goes right through his chest.
Yeah. So he drags Robbie inside and eats him.
Yeah.
He's going down the path now.
Free lunch, yeah.
Meg finds him, and she's outside the door, and she tells him at this point that she is pregnant, and he has her take him home. And at home, he has to be chained up in the basement and says, don't let me loose, no matter what I say, no matter what I do. Keep me chained up here so I can't hurt anybody. And again, very Wolfman-like in that he's not a bad guy.
Yeah, Lon Chaney.
He's a victim of circumstance and is now something he doesn't want to be.
Yep.
So she chains him up in the basement, and she starts to try to research this and figure out what's going on. She goes and talks to Carlson, who's in the hospital, and gets some information from him. And then she goes back to the house where he got the suit from, and she sees a video of Carlson possessed by the demon.
It's standing right in front of a chair. There's like a chair with like clasps for like your wrists and your ankles, like where you would like hold someone down. And then she finds the camera on a tripod that's facing it. And so then she opens it up and sees that old video.
Yeah. And I love how in movies, cameras that have been sitting somewhere for years always have battery life. You ever notice that? You don't got to charge nothing.
They work right away.
Yeah. Yep. Perfect.
Yeah. It's footage from 9 years ago.
Carlson says that only he can help her. So at this point, Jack comes home, and this all started with Jack's birthday party. Back to our theme. He comes home and he hears his dad in the basement, and he goes down and he tells him about a bully at school.
Yeah. He's like, I want to see my number one birthday boy. And he says it kind of crazy like, and I was like, that's kind of cool. Like he says it like he's the Joker or something, like real psychotic. Kid just comes down there. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Dad. Where you been?
Yeah, you tied up down here? Hey, Dad, you seem tied up.
You're chained in the basement. Nothing odd about this. And then Kent says, Jack, do you know where the bolt cutters are? And it's like, okay. So Jack brings him the bolt cutter. We don't see any of this. Next thing we know, he's gone.
Yeah.
And Kent goes to the bully's house, and he eats the bully.
Yeah. who seemed like a real narcissistic punk. He's got like pictures of himself on the wall. His parents seemed like they spoiled the crap out of him. He's talking on Xbox with his friends. They all seem like jerks.
Yeah, total d-bags, all of them. Yeah, very
Yeah.
stereotypical bully.
Mm-hmm.
At home, the dog starts to attack Meg, and it's because he's messed up from eating the clown nose.
Right.
And Carlson appears just in time to behead the dog.
With the
And
machete.
she's like super mad, like, you killed my dog. And he's like, no, he's a demon now. He's about to kill you.
Yeah. Well, when you watch that scene, you actually think it's misdirection for 1 second. You think Carlson's bad, right? You're like, what is this guy doing? And then you see the paint splat, like that rainbow paint splatter from the dog's head. You're like, oh, okay.
So Carlson tells her about, because she watched the video and she kind of like, what's the deal? And she says, his brother was a doctor and he worked in the cancer ward, and his brother got him out of the suit by feeding the demon 5 terminally ill kids to release him. And afterwards, they tried to destroy the suit, but it was impervious to fire or any other efforts.
Fire, acid, and they said they didn't want to throw it in the ocean because what if someone found it and used it? They just wanted to lock it up themselves and protect it.
Which when we found the suit, it was just hanging in the guy's basement. So it was not like super locked up.
No,
like Kent didn't have to break into a safe to get this clown suit. He just
right. Yeah.
And
no one was even at the house. I think they're getting ready to sell it.
Right.
So they're going to sell the house anyways. It's like, dude, you're selling the house to someone else anyways. Like, what?
So Carlson goes with Meg, and they're out looking for Kent, and we see him. He's hiding out in a kid's like play location,
Chuck
like
E. Cheese. I think it actually shows. Yeah, I think it shows Chuck E. Cheese in the mirror real quick for a second.
I was looking for it, and I never. It was.
I thought it said
like
Chuck E. Cheese.
But yeah, that's what I wrote. It was just like a Chuck E. Cheese, so it must have been a Chuck E. Cheese. So he's hiding out, and he's eating kids, and he's trapping kids. And there's what I thought was a cool scene is there's a ball pit with a slide into it, and a bunch of kids, running around and yelling, and all of a sudden blood starts running down the slide, and then an arm,
and then the
kids are all like screaming and.
Yeah. And it was super indulgent. Like there's just tons of blood, like a river of it flows down.
Yep. So Meg finally locates Kent, and he's more transformed now. He's less Kent and more demon.
Mm-hmm.
And Carlson tries to behead him, but he sees him coming and he grabs it and he knocks him down. And the demon tells Meg, "Bring me one more child and you can have your husband back." Kind of makes a deal.
She's thinking about it. Yeah.
And she goes outside, and you can see her considering her awful choice when a girl comes up to her and says, "Hey, I know you from the dentist office. My mom's not here. I got nobody. Can you give me a ride home?" And she's like,
Yeah, she's just kind of dazed, like, yeah, sure, get in. Like, it's just like you can tell it's good acting. She's thinking about it, like the audience is thinking about it. She's thinking about it. Like you kind of just know.
Yeah, I like those, what would you do moments. Everybody is always quick to jump on one side or the other, but I think when you're faced with a real choice, it's much more layered and complex than you imagine.
It's much more layered and complex, and most people don't know what they would do in certain situations.
So I agree. I thought she did a good job of really showing the torment of what to do.
Yeah, and she almost has that frazzled look of like because there's the crowd of everyone and the cops, and she's walking slowly through it while everyone else is being frantic, which does a good job of conveying her state of confusion. I just thought the scene it was well shot.
Agree. So she does take her to the meeting place where the demon said, bring a child to this location. And she tells the girl she's home, and the girl's, I don't know, 10, 12 maybe,
something like that. Yeah.
And like she doesn't even question it. Like if you pull into your house,
she seems kind of shocked too, right? Like she's like feels like she's abandoned. There's a murder there, cops, and she just wants to get home. Like a kid lost in a mall. Just kind of scared. Yeah.
But she just like it's pitch black. She just gets out of the car like, okay, I'm home.
Well, she passes out and she takes a nap, and then all of a sudden, and Meg parks in the dark, and she's like, "We're here, honey," like, and just opens the door, and she wakes up. She's like, "We're here, okay," and gets out, and immediately realizes, she's like, "This isn't my home," and then Meg shuts the door.
Yeah. But Meg kind of changes her mind and wants her to get back in the car, but the girls run off at this point.
Detective shows up, I think, chases her off.
Yeah. Jack is back home with her dad, and she realizes the demon's not at this meeting place. And she realizes it was a diversion, and she's heading home to save her son. At home, the fully converted, fully realized demon is there, and it rips her dad's jaw off, demanding one more child.
Yeah.
And so he kind of has like a cat and mouse chase with Meg, and it gets her in the basement, and it pulls up her shirt, and it's like sticking its claws in her belly for the unborn child.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go any farther.
You know what? I didn't even put that together. That's right. That's why that's a good observation. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, the unborn child.
But it's like, not to be gross, but like she's barely pregnant. Like, that's not what you need.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's threatening, right? Like, if you don't give it to me, this is what I'll take from you. Yeah. Yeah.
Because he sticks like his sharp claws like in, but doesn't.
Yeah, just like down in his stomach, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they fight, and Meg tries to fight him off until she ends up knocked out. And Jack is hiding from the demon, and just as the demon finds him, Meg has come to, and she gets the chain that she had Kent tied up with around its neck and ties it up. And it's cut off by the neck.
It's like a dog on a short leash. It just can't move any further.
Exactly. Yeah, good, perfect analogy. And at this point, it speaks in Kent's voice to try and sway her, but she's not swayed at this point, and she decapitates it with a sledgehammer. And the head comes loose. At one point, there's a cool part where it's not all the way loose, and she has to pick it up and like rip the last
and
few
she used her
sinews
foot.
of flesh.
Yeah, she's like, yeah. I thought that was good.
And once it's off, the head turns into like a bubbling foam, and then you see Kent's face emerge beneath.
Yeah, it starts to like peel off, and like, yeah, his face is under there, perfect, like preserved.
And at the end, we see the clown suit end up in the evidence box. And I went back to at the end, as Kent's face emerges from this bubbling foam, I go back to a werewolf movie, and I'm thinking of David Naughton at the end of American Werewolf in London.
Yeah,
where he reveals back to be himself after he's shot down
at the end. Yeah, you're right. That's a really good analogy. I never put that together. That's a great analogy. It's a clown werewolf movie.
Yeah, and it's just these tragic characters who are unfortunate victims of circumstance, and they always have the doomed ending because there is no other alternative.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, like they're doomed souls. Like they're basically given a fate where there's, I mean, and that happens in life. It's relatable. Some people they just have some kind of doomed fate, and there's nothing they can do about it. You wake up one day and you have you open up a piece of mail and it's like you have cancer.
Yeah,
there's just no going back. Like you wake up and well, a loved one died.
Yeah.
And the wake is the funeral's this weekend. It's like it happens quick, so it's tragedy that's relatable and understandable at the at the very core of the human experience.
And I think that's one thing that horror movies do for us in general is take that tragedy and show it in a different way where you can kind of put it outside of yourself and view it as cathartic and entertainment rather than dealing with real world tragedies. But
yeah, I think that's one of the best things that they do. It's a way to confront malevolence, and kind of trick it into, like you said, a very cathartic form of entertainment.
Yeah. So those are our birthday movies. Again, Matt, happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Thanks,
not
Jerry.
happy birthday to me. I'm not in a latex mask. This is really me. But yeah, these were two very diverse and different movies. Again,
very specific genre we picked. If there's not a whole, you're not going to a store. I don't think people go to the store, like the VHS store anymore, like a Blockbuster or anything like that. But you wouldn't have like the Happy Birthday horror section, right? So we had to really go find, go into needles and haystacks and find some. But there was a pretty good amount.
Yeah. Well, I think the well is shallow enough that when my birthday hits, we're just going to pretend it's not happening.
Yeah, we'll just find another theme for something else going on that
Another
week.
category will be fine. But
Yeah.
it was still fun to do.
It was something fun, something different. Yeah, I figured today is specifically my birthday, and we're shooting, so we were recording. So I was just like, yeah, let's do it. You know?
So I always do. I always enjoy that our movies are often so diverse from each other, and I think that definitely holds true here. But
Yep.
no classics among them, but interesting movies nonetheless.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, well, that is our show for this week. For Matt's birthday week, we are the Weekly Horoscope. I'm Jerry. That's the birthday boy, Matt, and we will see you next time. Thank you as always for listening.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everyone.
Your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.